Okay. Well, thank you. My name is Tamara DeRitter. I'm the chair for the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm co-chair for the Land Use and Transportation Committee. And I welcome you to our January 20th, 2022 meeting. I'd like to go around the group here and have everyone say their name and then put themselves on mute if you're not speaking. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. Kelly, would you say your name and position?
So Kelly Davis, I am co-chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee along with Tamara. Terry?
Terry Parker, board member on the Transportation Committee and rep to CNN for the transportation.
Pass it on, Terry. Pass it on to Sharon.
He's on mute. I'm Sharon Fuchs. I'm a member of the Land Use and Transportation Committee.
Let's pass it on to Zachary.
Hi there, I'm Zachary Lauritsen. That's Vega. I'm one of the members of the committee. Ray, why don't you go next?
Fine, I'm just trying to move the computer to a more stable Wi-Fi connection. Hi, thank you for inviting me to the meeting. And thank Kelly for including the letter in the notes that I sent around in advance of the meeting. So.
And your name is Ray.
We'll talk about sidewalk infrastructure, I hope, later on. Yes, Ray or Raymond, either one is fine.
Okay, could you pass it on to the next person?
If I'm in trouble, you can call me Raymond.
Meryl, why don't you introduce yourself?
Meryl, I'm not on any committee, and but I'm concerned about the proposal at 62nd in Sacramento. Nick?
Hi, I'm a resident of the neighborhood and just want to check out who's behind this newsletter I get in my door every once in a while, and some of the issues discussed in that newsletter.
Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan Ferguson. I live adjacent to 62nd and Sacramento, and I'm here because of that issue. And can I send it to Nick Gross?
Thanks, Susan. My name's Nick Gross. I am here as an interested neighbor. Thanks. Oh, and I'll pass it to, let's see who hasn't gone. Kathy.
Yeah. I'm also an interested neighbor. I'm over on Alameda, but that's one of my main crossing points. So, and I don't know how to pass it on.
Okay, pass it
Felix.
on to Felix.
I'm a interested neighbor, and
I can barely hear you, Felix. Can you speak up?
sorry, microphone was in the wrong place, the retracted position, as it were. I live on 62nd in Sacramento. I'm an interested neighbor, but I should be more involved anyway, so I'm here.
Wonderful. Good to have you.
And I'll send it to Peter.
Hello, Peter Canepa. I live on 62nd and Hancock. Yeah, just interested in seeing what y'all are up to and talking about this proposal on 62nd and Sacramento. Thanks.
Hey,
I
Peter,
don't know.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Sure. Canepa.
And Aaron, what's your last name?
Zoller. Greetings, everybody. Aaron Zoller here. I am a resident. I live at 60th and Sacramento, and I am interested in the discussion around the pedestrian safety improvements. Thank you.
And
what can you spell your last name, please?
Zahler.
Perfect.
Do you have all the names for the record?
I
Kelly?
do.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to, for us to read the land acknowledgement and neighborhood agreements. If I can share my screen, I would like to do that. Kelly? Okay. Okay, I will start it and then I'll pass it on to Sharon to help finish it or pass it on. This is the land acknowledgement statement that was adopted by our board on November 2nd of this past year. And it's adapted from a Portland Metro Habitat for Humanity acknowledgement. As a neighborhood, we acknowledge the unceded land we occupy and its original inhabitants, including the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River. Currently united as the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, the community includes over 30 tribes and bands from Western Oregon, Northern California, and Southwest Washington. Pass it on to Sharon. Can you continue the maybe not. Okay, I'll continue. We acknowledge that this land was seized through coercion, dishonesty, and brutality.
I'm sorry, I'm
Acknowledge
on mute.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Okay, thank you.
We acknowledge that this land was seized through coercion, dishonesty, and brutality. We acknowledge the violent history of Euro-American settlement that sought to extinguish indigenous life from this land. We recognize the enduring influence of that history on our region and the nearly 70,000 Native people descended from over 380 tribes living here today. And I'll pass it on to Zach.
You may hear a child in the background. Many of the major roads in the Rose City Park neighborhood connected Chinook villages between three rivers, which white colonizers named the Columbia, the Willamette, and the Sandy, instead of honoring the older names such as Nchwana, which means Great River, for the largest river of the three. The mission statement, Rose City, do you want me to read the mission statement?
Yeah, if you would, please.
Okay. Rose City Park Neighborhood Association works to build a safe, equitable, and healthy environment for all neighbors present and future.
Thank you very much. And now I need to go to another document. And that one is, where did you go? It's land acknowledgement. There's one more item, but I can't seem to find it. And these are the neighborhood agreements on how we conduct our meeting. In June 2021, these were adopted and then reduced down to bullet points. We take collective and individual ownership. We will center and prioritize the most marginalized voices. We will assume the best intentions and will bring our best intentions. We will use ouch and oops to identify harms and to swiftly apologize in reply. We'll take space and make space. We'll listen for understanding and remain respectfully engaged. We will deal with the issues, not with people. And we will be willing to experience discomfort in difficult conversations. And we will expect that difficult issues will not be fixed quickly, but we'll continue our work to support and engage our neighborhood and related communities. in the process. Okay, now we're off to the races as far as the agenda is concerned. Kelly, do you have that available, or should I just read it out? Okay, I will just read it out.
Just read it out, please.
All right. We have the agenda revisions and approval, which is where we're at. Minutes for approval. Actually, I think we not only we have the December 16th minutes from the non-meeting we held. We can talk about that. And also there were the November meeting minutes that we couldn't approve at the December meeting. I'm not sure if people have had a chance to read the minutes from either meeting. I think Terry, I think you did have some edits for the gathering on the 16th.
Yeah, I sent it to you. It was basically one line of what I said. I wanted to make it clear that I was talking about cargo or things being carried in vehicles. I just found another piece that was broken a couple of days ago that I had in the back of my truck. So I just wanted to correct that and add the word add emissions to it.
Okay. Do you see that change?
I see you on the screen. I don't see.
Kelly?
Yeah, I printed
I
that
did
out.
send you an email on it.
So I can make the correction.
Kelly is
Okay.
making that change. Okay. Oh, wrong one. Are there any other changes to that document? Okay. Actually, I was supposed to go through the agenda. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Let me go back. Under new business, we have new items from members that are here that are not on the list. So that's the time to bring it up. Rose City Park sidewalks. Raymond's going to talk about that. Speeding on Northeast 48th. The land use and transportation email list. With that, I want to also bring up the policy committee, creating a policy committee to clarify the charter as far as membership. And that would go with the email list as well. Intersections with impaired sightlines. And then we've got what many people are talking about or wanting to listen and talk about is the slow streets on Sacramento, crosswalk at 62nd and 62nd and Brazil redesign. And following that are updates for the pedestrian path at the Rose City Park Golf Course. Cut through traffic, and Zach has that as a topic. Updates on Umpqua Bank and its tour. Possible next steps on tennis courts and the Cully TIF. And then the check-in. Are there any changes or revisions to the agenda as it stands right now?
I've got one, Tamara. I just want to make a comment when we get to slow streets regarding, what is it, 52nd there by the Daily Cafe.
Okay.
And
So,
Tamara,
yeah,
I think there's a typo here. You want to talk about the 64th and Brazil redesign, I think, rather than 62nd.
yes,
Right.
I think you are correct on that. Thank you. Okay. Do we want to change the priorities of any of these?
Yeah, I'd move to have our discussion about the 62nd in Sacramento and 64th in Brazil first, because it seems like a large percent of these folks are here and then they can head out if they'd like for the evening.
Thank you, Zachary. That would be fantastic if we could move that up.
Is that okay, Raymond?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, we'll switch those. And have 62nd and 64th in Sacramento, all those things on Sacramento there. I see that Jenny has joined us. Jenny, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it sounds like Zach's kids want to introduce themselves though. I'm Jenny Lyman, Transportation and Land Use Committee member, and I live at the corner of 63rd and Broadway.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we've got a change to the agenda as far as adding information about the policy committee and also a correction saying 64th and Brazee intersection and adding slow streets at Halsey. But the big part here is switching or moving all the stuff on Sacramento to be first. And then the remaining work would be after that. With those changes, can we get an approval of the amended?
I move we approve the amended agenda as Tamara read it.
All those in
Second it.
favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Jenny, is that an aye is from you as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, then let us go ahead next and go to the Brazee, excuse me, the slow streets on Sacramento, and what has been a interesting discussion so far, and I'm not sure what is happening as far as the installation goes. And Sharon made some photographs of 64th as well. Sharon, you want to update us on what's on the ground out there?
Right. The document of the view corridors that was finalized in 1991, designated views corridors. I think the project was started in 1989. In the 1991 finalized document where it designated the view corridors, the area of Sacramento was one. And there was a map in that over 300-page document that, I don't know all the streets it encompassed, but it had a dot in the map right at 63rd and Brazee. And then from that dot, it had a fan out, gray shaded area and a fan, I presume, to represent the view as you look from left to right. So I decided I would go right to where the dot was and make sure that both of, or all of the neighbors that were there at that area, in particular, one that is right on the northwest corner of 63rd and Brazee, who has a bay window that crosses right through to the view of Mount Hood, that I could contact that household. And I also happened to meet the neighbor that was on the northeast corner of that intersection and introduced myself, and he allowed me to come up into his yard. And as he said, he did many times for people so they could take pictures. So I had the opportunity to view the view corridor. Are we still going?
Yeah, we're still going.
Oh, there you go.
I just popped the picture in.
Oh, thank you. There's the view from the house, and it was a gorgeous day and this beautiful view of Mount Hood, and it looked out right across Brazee and right across the candlestick forest of the yellow and the crosswalk and the candlesticks there. And I couldn't be exact, but I tried to inform both of those households that bots, as I call them, those, I don't even know what they're called, posts, yellow concrete block, round circular things with a post and a speed sign one, perhaps two, was going to be placed in that area. And I just wanted them to know that and have an opportunity. They had received a letter and they had Scott Cohn's information, contact information, and one was just going to say, I don't like it, period. And the other one hopefully would be a little more specific. I'm not sure they really understood the difference between the crosswalk Candlestick Forest and the Slow Streets project, but neither of them cared for either of it. So anyway, I just wanted to give them the courtesy of a personal heads up. And then I got a great picture.
Sharon, I think the actual correct description of the candlesticks is plastic bollards, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
I think they're bollards. Yeah.
I mean, candlesticks works, but I mean, yeah.
Okay, I am going to share the screen of the letter that went out to the neighbors describing what is being proposed. And maybe we can start from there as well.
While you're doing that, Tamara, I'm just curious what our goal in this conversation is. The last I heard was it was 64th and Brazil was happening, and that was that. That was what I read through Scott's email. But I'm curious what our goal in this conversation is.
Well, I think since the bollards have not been installed yet, the question is whether or not they can put in planters instead of maybe these big round things with huge tall signs, and instead put the signs on the side of the road or something like that instead of right in the middle of the street.
Okay.
That would be my ask for
Gotcha.
them.
Okay.
And so far, the neighborhood has not made any recommendation one way or the other, but I think this gives us an opportunity to do so at this meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
So can I just ask, these concrete planters, are they an eventuality? I mean, or are we, that's the first I've heard of them. I was assuming that these structures that are there now in the middle of the street were the permanent solution.
Well, I am not sure if they're already installed. Then I'm not sure if we can change them.
So
Yeah, so I'm referring to, I was assuming that what was going in at 63rd and Sacramento was going to look like what has gone in at 72nd in Sacramento or 74th, which is just, there's nothing planterish about it. It's rather brutal in appearance, but it's encouraging to hear that they are thinking about planters. That's great.
My machine doesn't want to show the map or the diagrams that came with this. So I am going to stop share and then open it up for conversation of what we've received so far. And I know that I've received a number of emails and Kelly, some stating that they favored the bollards or the Slow Street bollards at 62nd, which is of most hot concern as well. So we're talking about two intersections. One is at 64th, which was the original proposal. And then it was added in discussion that maybe 62nd would be better because it's closer to where people turn north to get up to Sandy Boulevard. And at this point, I've got Michelle Bounds, Susan Ferguson, I think is here tonight, maybe not. Susan Roger Ferguson, Meryl Schneider, and Amy and Carl Singmaster, who are all supporters of the Neighborhood Greenway program, but do not want to have any of those bollards at the intersection of 62nd. I also have received kind of a form letter email from Laura and Peter Canepa, Lydia Kumaran, and Ian Davey, and Scott and Alice Hunt of Rose City Park, who are in favor of the bollards being there at 62nd. So I open it up to discussion. I think number one, let's at least my take is, if we have these installed, let's install them as garden planters. But that's my take.
Are you calling the bot a bollard now?
Yeah,
Okay, that's what it is, technically a bollard.
it's technically a bollard with a sign on it.
All right,
I'm not sure if that's technically a bollard, but the plastic candlesticks are technically a bollard. I don't think the bot with the big base is considered a bollard.
whatever. Okay. But what you're referencing is one of those big round concrete things with the pole and the sign.
We can call
And-
it a barricade,
Okay,
whatever.
okay.
We've got two hands up. Do you have anything further to ask, Sharon, at this point?
No,
Okay, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the bollards are unattractive, but it is better than nothing. And Tamara, to your point about a sign on the side of the street, that's the equivalent of a strongly worded memo that's not going to really affect anybody's behavior who's driving too fast, who's negotiating a corner incorrectly. I mean, the city has thought about these measures. The measures are designed to affect behavior in that way. It is unfortunate that they don't have the money or the budget to make them more attractive and have a better sense of place in the neighborhood. But not a day goes by. I mean, if you subscribe to the Oregonian, the headline yesterday was the number of traffic fatalities, pedestrian fatalities in the last year has been the greatest in 4 decades. Something is better than nothing, and these are measures that the city has given thought to. Need them. We need to have a neighborhood, a city, everybody who is walking, everybody who's going to be riding a bike, everybody who's not in a car needs to be able to inform this decision. And frankly, I'm surprised that they're deferring it to the neighborhood. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
They're not necessarily deferring it. They're actually just asking our input. And they make the final decision.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Meryl, you had your hand up?
Well, I'm right there at the corner. I think it's overkill. I think Aaron said what's at 72nd Sacramento is really brutal. And living there, to have to look upon that brutal, unattractive barricade, just really an imposition on my enjoyment of my property. I think the city could come up with something far better. They don't have to do it on the cheap. So, I think the email that Scott Cohen sent to Tamara said that the city would defer to the neighborhood association on this. And, I really would request the neighborhood association not to align on this. It's It's just too brutal and too much of an imposition on my enjoyment of my property. And I think it's also unnecessary. Thank
Now,
you.
are you talking about the 62nd intersection or the 64th intersection or both?
The 62nd intersection.
Okay. Peter's got his hand up first, and then we'll have Susan. Hi, Peter.
Hello, sorry about the centering here. I live down the hill, just off 62nd and Hancock, and I'm a parent of a couple kids who go to the park and walk up the hill and climb those stairs and sometimes cross that street. So in general, I advocate for anything that slows down traffic in the neighborhood, brutal or not. I'm a proponent of slower automobile traffic and less automobile traffic on our residential neighborhood streets. Similarly, as a cyclist, anytime I can get on a street that has the slower flow of automobiles, the roads are for all modes of transit. So yeah, I would be a proponent as a cyclist for anything that gives more space and slows down big vehicles that are sharing the road with bikes. So in general, I would love it to be aesthetically pleasing, all for that. But if it's the choice between nothing and something not aesthetically pleasing, I would choose the Spartan concrete bollard or whatever we're calling it. So yeah, that's it.
And Peter, is that for 64th or just 62nd or both?
I think since there's one all the way on the other end there at the edge of the at 70th or 72nd, I think 62nd probably makes the most sense because there's a lot of traffic coming up from the foot traffic coming up from the park there. So that seems like a logical spot. And there's kind of that bend as you head west towards the school there. So cars coming around that bend from the school heading eastbound, it would be a logical point to slow traffic down there. So yeah, I would love to have planters. That would be fantastic. But in general, I'm just a proponent of sharing the road and slowing down automobile traffic. So thank you.
Good. Thank you, Peter. Susan, you're next.
Thanks. Am I muted? Let's see.
Nope, you're on.
Okay, I can't disagree certainly that we want to have safe streets and slow streets. I think all of the people that signed the letter that I signed are all cyclists, or they're avid cyclists or avid walkers. So we certainly agree with that. I do think that this is redundant because Portland has that unique law where at every corner is to be considered a crosswalk. Pedestrians always get priority at each corner. And so I think it's redundant to put in a crosswalk there. And to the comment about the headline in the Oregonian yesterday, and we've been hearing these stories for several years, I really think we are lucky to live in a privileged white neighborhood by and large. And I would like to see the money that is spent that's being proposed for this to be spent in East Portland, where we do hear about these traffic fatalities as people try and cross wide streets with poor lighting and high traffic.
Okay, so you're advocating for no bollards at all on
Right.
Sacramento and
Right.
no crosswalk.
No bollards. I'm just talking about 62nd and
Okay.
Sacramento. That's all I'm addressing.
Okay.
And Scott Cohen seemed, he was very willing to listen to these concerns and said it was up to the neighborhood association.
And one thing I remember someone saying at that during that discussion is if there is a crosswalk, it does indicate that people have to stop if someone steps into that crosswalk. Not everyone stops when people step off a curb, even though it is the law.
Most people do. I walk a lot.
Okay, all right.
I get my 10,000 steps in every day. So I'm out there.
All right, Felix, you're next.
Thanks for taking the time. I live on 62nd and Sacramento as well. I'm on the east corner, and I advocate for a crosswalk. I think a crosswalk there is a very good idea. I understand there's a lot of people around, and I see a lot of kids launching across Sacramento without their parents, probably because they've run down the block. And it can be a scary place. So I am a great advocate for a crosswalk there. Someone earlier mentioned that the city had put a lot of thought into this. That's a misconception, because this issue was brought up a month or two ago by a resident on 64th, who's a good friend of mine, and this was a knee-jerk reaction from Scott Cohen to just go ahead and throw this thing in too, since we happen to be doing things. There was no thought, engineering, traffic study, anything else put into this suggestion that we put one of these humongous pieces of concrete pipe in the middle of the street on Sacramento and 62nd and take away about 15 parking spaces. Right now, I have a lot of visitors to the park who park by my house, and I'm okay with that. But if a lot of these parking spaces disappear, 62nd is going to be very heavily parked up to accommodate that those people who are going to the park. And I'm concerned that there is a lot of traffic that drives shockingly fast on 62nd, and with the narrowing of the streets, I think that could be a significant hazard. So again, there was no thought put into this by the city whatsoever. This was just we'll just duplicate something that looks horrific at 62nd because somebody said that would be a good idea. A crosswalk, I think a crosswalk is an excellent idea. I agree with Tamara's statement about you do have to stop when somebody steps into a crosswalk, and just having a crosswalk painted on the street there would raise people's awareness. And of course, there's always signs indicating that there's a crosswalk ahead that goes along with something like that. I'm not an advocate of the style of object they've dumped in the middle of the road at 70th. That is just horrific, and I'm not sure the street's that wide here. Anyway, there's a lot of other options for that. And I think in a letter I saw, Scott said that a planter would be about the same cost. So I think we need to push back on the city a little bit and welcome a crosswalk, but encourage a little deeper thinking and perhaps another budget year to have for some sort of obstruction in the street. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nick, you're next.
Thanks. Just a couple thoughts. The first, I'm generally in support of any traffic calming measures to help, as they intend to do, calm traffic on our neighborhood streets, make it more bike friendly, more walk friendly. I also agree that the barricade, I think we're referring to it as the concrete barricade. Yes, it is not aesthetically pleasing to look at. But if it is a decision of no barricade or a barricade, I certainly align more with the barricade for the traffic calming purposes. Secondly, I guess the part I'm struggling a bit with hearing is there seems to be an understanding that there is a speeding concern, mostly from cars coming up the hill from sort of the lower or 48 area up the hill on Sacramento. When that's come up, I've seen a lot of heads nod and agree that there seems to be a speeding issue. But then when it comes to some kind of countermeasure, there seems to be sort of a disconnect on people not wanting to implement anything. And I think something needs to be done to slow down vehicles coming up the hill there. And then my last point is to just encourage the people on this call and the Transportation Land Use Committee members to think about people beyond just our neighborhood. This is a commuting route for people biking, and there are certain people who bike just through our neighborhood, so and don't live in our neighborhood. If they maybe live out towards Rocky Butte neighborhood or somewhere like that, they're actually just coming through, and those people may choose to ride their bike as a way to get to work, or some people just don't have access to a vehicle, and the only way they can get to work is by bike or walking. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Aaron and Meryl, you still have your hands up. Did you want to say something else?
If I could.
Okay, I'd like to hear from other folks here first before we give second dibs, if that's okay. Yeah, Kathy?
Well, I'd just like to say that I'm also a walker and a cyclist. I do half marathons and I train all over this area. And it has not been my experience that people stop at unmarked crosswalks. And especially if there's a corner on one side of the street, but a straightaway on the other side of the street. People don't even consider that to be a corner. And my husband was a policeman, and he and I have argued about whether that is indeed a corner or not. And it should be. But there just been a lot of silly, stuff back and forth, whether it has a ramp or it doesn't, or what makes it a corner. And I think cars do, when they're eastbound, they kind of power up that hill. And there's also a bit of a curve in that hill. So it would not surprise, it really, I think it is kind of a dangerous place when people are headed for that stairway. I mean, I've had people yell at me that I should go to a crosswalk when I am in, at four corners trying to cross. So that simply has not been my experience. It would be nice to have a planter there, but if you have a crosswalk, do you need anything other than a crosswalk, would be my question. And if you have a crosswalk there, why do you need something at 64th? It's only 2 blocks away. I was also a participant. I was present when PBOT came and explained what they want to do in the neighborhood, including Alameda and 57th and all that stuff. And it was my understanding that the bollards at 64th were temporary. That they put stuff up and that's easy to take down when they get a consensus on what wants to be done. So I'm not sure what's going on at 64th, but I think we need some kind of a crosswalk at 62nd. That's all I have to say.
Just a point of clarification. I think, well, the candlesticks are temporary right now. And that's what those little tiny things are. The bollards would be actually the more concrete items that are like at 72nd.
At 70, ooh, well, that's pretty ugly down there.
Okay, so your take is that the crosswalk, yes, and what about any of the bollards?
Yeah, do we even need more than that? Or
Tamara, can I make a point of clarification? At least my understanding of what Scott said, I asked him specifically how hard it was or was not to move these concrete bollards. And he said that it's just a forklift comes in, picks it up, puts it in a truck. And so they're actually quite temporary. If they were put in and then were later replaced with something.
Good, thank you. Okay. Anyone else who has not spoken want to speak up on this before we get second dibs here? Okay, Meryl. Or Aaron, I forget.
Well,
I could,
I think a crosswalk is a great idea. I have no opposition to a crosswalk. I do oppose that ugly looking brutal barrier. At least we should attempt to push back and see if we get a planter. I don't want to speak for Felix, but Felix and his wife are really avid gardeners and have a beautiful, beautiful property there. And, it wouldn't be much for Felix. And if Felix wasn't interested in doing it, I would take it on, maintaining the planter. Anything is better than what's up at 70th and Sacramento. And I just oppose that ugly thing, having to look at that ugly thing every day.
Okay, Aaron, you wanted to speak again?
yeah, I just wanted to address, somebody mentioned spending the money, giving them money back to the city for them to spend on East County or something like that. There are few things in this country that have perpetuated racism and, made the lives of BIPOC, our BIPOC citizens difficult as infrastructure, whether it's people hemmed in by highways in Los Angeles, whether it's people having to deal with speeding traffic and lack of crosswalks in Portland. It is, make no mistake, if we commit to slow streets and implementing these measures to protect citizens in general outside of our neighborhood, we are doing our part to help that population as well. Again, I acknowledge that we're not getting measures that are as attractive as the neighborhood wants, but they are better than nothing and they're essential. As mentioned earlier, this last year was the worst in 40 years. And the people who were impacted by that the most, again, were minorities, were people who didn't have the protection of an SUV or whatever when they were driving. And finally, again, to the points people keep revisiting laws and code that Portland has put in place around, pedestrian access, bicyclist access. It's laws just really don't affect behavior. And I think one of the reasons why Portland has been able to make some significant improvements in all of those areas is that they've recognized that, and it's committed money to measures and things in the middle of the road that really do address the issue in a way that can be measured and has proven out. Thank you.
Felix, we've got you, but then we have Terry and then Nick. Oh, and Susan. Felix,
Easy.
you have something to say?
Easy question.
Okay.
Is it possible? What's the financial trade-off to have a speed trap there? An automated speed trap that's doling out tickets to people coming up the hill, because that actually has a payback to it. And when people get flashed, they're going to know it. And we did have a really interesting accident in the middle of the night here a couple of weeks ago, where somebody ran into Merrill's wall and turned over on their side. And it was weird. It was in the ice. Anyway, that's my a question I'd like to have us ask the city is perhaps we should consider a speed trap along that road somewhere. There's plenty of phone poles to mount stuff on. That could have that has had a huge change. I used to live in Laurelhurst, and that's had a huge change at the intersection of 39th and Sandy.
Yeah, I don't know what the cost is, but I think it is pretty steep to install one of those, at least as a permanent fixture. They do have those flashy signs that are movable signs that you could put at a location, but again, that's temporary. And but we can ask, but I know that the cost would be a lot more sustained than just putting in the barricades, would be my guess.
Understand, even if we could get in the rotation to have one show up every X number of months or something for a week, I think that would help quite a bit, because there's a lot of people that commute through our neighborhood. There's a lot of people who commute with cars through our neighborhood, and they're in a hurry to get somewhere else.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Terry?
Yeah. I'm not gonna, I wanted to listen to what other people had to say before I made some comments. And what I've heard tonight is the vilifying of drivers. I mean, I got accused of vilifying the Ellington Apartments and how many shootings there were up there. That to me, that's my safety and where I live, or very close to where I live. And we're not hearing from the drivers. We have on the list of things that you talked about. You know, we listen, we done. I don't hear comments from drivers. I hear comments from bicyclists. I hear comments from walkers. And I want to know what the data is. What's the data of the speeding? I mean, yes, there was an article in the paper about how the deaths and traffic deaths are way up, but so is the population. Has the number of people, crashes and whatnot, has the percentage per population increased? I don't think so, because the population of Portland is way up. And one of my concerns is safety for drivers. And you put these things in, these big concrete barriers in the middle of a street, and say you do have a speeding car and somebody crashes into one of those. The city is liable. This has happened. I think it was on 33rd Avenue many years ago in one of the traffic circles. The city was liable for either an injury or a death. I don't want to see somebody crashing into it. If you look at some of the stuff that's on the freeways or the entrances to the freeways, they have a cushion burial, cushions in front of something that's in the middle of the roadway. I agree with the idea of a painted crosswalk. I think that is just a super idea at 60 or at the stairs. I think that makes a whole lot of sense with signs to do that. Let's see, I'm trying to look at my notes here, and they weren't all in the order that I wanted to. I'll just leave it there. But I wanted to hear what other people said. I don't agree with those great big things in the middle of the street. I think we can find something better. And I think we also have to listen to the drivers and not just the people that are vilifying the drivers. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you for your thoughts. Nick hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll have Susan. Okay.
I want to support the sentiment in favor of physical barriers for cars. I don't think anything else works. But as a driver, and I would guess that most people here are also drivers as well as cyclists and walkers. So nothing else really works besides physical barriers. It'd be nice, preferable if they were more aesthetically pleasing, but it is expensive. Ideally would be reclaiming space from the streets for people to not be in cars from these big streets. That's it for now.
So do you have any comments about the crosswalk?
More crosswalks, yes, please.
Okay.
And I'd love to see more on Halsey, but that's another discussion.
It is. Susan, you're next.
Okay, I wanted to address the issue about the accident with Merrill's Wall. We were home that night. We are up high. We overlook 62nd and Sacramento. We overlook that intersection, and we heard a very loud noise. And I went out on our porch, probably 15 minutes after I heard the noise. And there was a policeman and a tow truck there. So I asked the policeman, this was about 11 o'clock at night, I asked him what had happened. And he said, well, there was someone sitting at the corner of 62nd and Sacramento who had been sitting there with his lights on for 10 or 15 minutes. Somebody had called it in. The police came and they found someone who was heavily impaired, who was asleep in his car. They tapped on the window and the guy's foot hit the gas. And so that's how he ended up driving his car into Merrill's Wall and flipping his car. It didn't have anything to do with speed at all. It was an impaired driver. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also to ask a question, if there is a crosswalk placed, are there any rules or parameters regarding parking? I mean, do people have to park X number of feet away from a crosswalk? Are there yellow lines? I don't know. Because I know people have expressed concerns about losing parking.
Question. I don't know the answer. Sharon, do you have the answer?
I have the answer. I'm sure it's a little ways away. Well, I'll just say that from the crosswalk. Just keep your car a little ways away so people can walk by there.
Okay.
Well, is that a choice or is that a legal requirement?
What, to park a little ways away from the crosswalk?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Just
polite to do it.
Yeah, just not in the crosswalk. People have to be able to walk in the crosswalk. I mean, so I honestly don't know.
Okay.
May I comment?
Yes,
now?
please.
The process of this was mixed up for sure. It was just a thought to have potentially the Slow Streets project begin at 62nd. That's all it was. Mr. Cohen was in on that particular meeting, and we made it very clear to him that neighbors needed to be informed and it needed some thinking. It was just a thought. The next thing we knew, things were painted in the street. And that raised some concern. And then when it came out, all the things, the changes that were going to have to occur, for just a thought, all of a sudden it became real. There has, to my knowledge, never been a crash at 62nd and Brazee. It is not an area of high concern. It is constricted in front of Merrill's home and the house across the street by cars that park on the street, which is actually nice because it does create a little bottleneck, which forces cars to slow down, whether they're headed east and whether they're headed west as they enter into it. So
Sharon,
it's kind of
Sharon, you meant 62nd and
62nd.
Oh,
Yes,
and
62nd in Sacramento is what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. There's never been anything, to my knowledge. I've lived here for a long time. I'm just a few houses away on 61st. And I'm a walker also, and children that go to the park and all of that. So 62nd is not really an area of big concern. It was just a thought, and Mr. Cohen frankly jumped the gun. 64th and Brazee and Sacramento is an area of concern. It's a wide open space. Cars cut cookies there. The neighbors were concerned about that. Yes, it's weird how Brazee and Sacramento and 64th all intersect, and it is nice to have a painted sidewalk. But then they went way overboard on that project, and it just became, and without great notice to the neighbors as to what they needed. Then the other project, the Slow Streets project, which is completely different, as we know, was to begin at 64th. Those barrels there are what are considered the temporary barriers. Mr. Cohen came and showed us some other temporary barriers, which were kind of plastic and high and looked very different than those current bots that are there. And he said that they were going to place those initially. Never was there any picture of those tall things at all. And then when they decided they were going to move the Slow Streets project to a permanent designation, that's when things kind of changed. And then we got the map, which, showing that area. And frankly, I can't tell if they're going to put one or two of those spots there, one in the big open area and then one on the other side of 64th, just on the east side of if 64th continued across Sacramento. To me, it looks like there's going to be two. There is no reason in the world to then have one at 62nd and two or even one at the 64th and Brzee. It just doesn't make sense. The crosswalk at 62nd, in the spirit of compromise, knowing that it would enhance use of the park and people feeling safe in an area that really doesn't really have a problem. There's never been a problem. And some shrubbery trimming. Felix, I think there's some shrubbery there that kind of impairs the view of little kids. I've driven there myself, and little kids will stand behind some of that shrubbery waiting for an opportunity to cross, and you frankly can't see them. So, just a little cleanup of that area, and I think it would be very nice. But I do not advocate for anything else other than a crosswalk there at 62nd, and then think about what's happening at 64th and Brzee. And I feel that I made a real effort going to the households at 63rd and Brzee and gave them a heads up and gave them an opportunity so that they would know exactly how their view corridor would change and they would have an opportunity to speak.
I do appreciate that. Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Terry.
Can I make just a couple of real quick comments here? Yeah, one, parking is important for the residents up there, particularly when houses don't have driveways or even if they do, on my street, the average number of cars is 2.2 per household. So whether you have a driveway or not, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. But what I really wanted to say was in this town, temporary all too often becomes permanent. And I think we have to look at it that way. The temporary may be permanent. So when we talk about temporary, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be temporary.
Okay, we've got Kathy again, and then Zachary, and then I think if we can, I'd like to winnow it down to us going ahead and making some motions here, because we can wrap at this all night, but we got other things to do. So Kathy, go ahead.
My husband just looked it up and you have to be 20 feet from a crosswalk parking.
I just looked that up too.
Yeah.
So
marked or unmarked.
Yeah.
Marked or unmarked. Yeah.
Marked or unmarked. So that does not happen, especially when there's a concert at the park. People are right there.
And it doesn't happen whenever you consider a crosswalk being at the corners, because people park all the way up to the corners. It just is. So
right.
I'm not sure how much it would be.
Right. Right.
Just put it there. Okay. And then we had Zachary had his hand up.
Sure. Thank you. I really want to just acknowledge and appreciate so many people came out. It means something when people show their energy and come and are interested, and that's really awesome. I think what I've heard, both by talking to neighbors and walking that area and then being at these meetings, it really is kind of two thoughts here. One is coming from the idea of, do we want to try and make our streets a little safer? Something that Felix said at our last meeting is he sits in his office and sees kids running down the sidewalk. They jump in that sidewalk or in that crosswalk there down to the park because they're excited to go to the park. Sometimes without any support from their family because they just got away from the hand of their parents. And that's terrifying, I believe is the word he used. And that's terrifying to me too, because I've got two little kids. And so I've heard a number of people here voice support who have kids and have pets and who are runners because they want their neighborhood to be safer. And I really want to acknowledge that aesthetics matter, they do. But I think we have to value, like, where do our values go? How something looks, or if our kids and our pets and our grandparents and ourselves, if we're safe. And if we can do something to be a little safer, that's really important. And I would hate for us to have this recorded conversation. This is a public meeting, to very clearly have that differentiation between, are we going to choose safety or are we going to choose aesthetics? And when we hear the story of a kid who gets hit at that intersection because someone comes whipping around 62nd to get on Sacramento, or someone comes up the S turn too fast and they hit someone there, for people to look at this meeting and say, wow, they chose the looks of something over safety. And that's where my fear is. And I really hope we choose to choose safety over something that doesn't look all that pretty. And I agree, it doesn't all look all that pretty. And then put together a group of people who say, let's raise some funds, or let's advocate to the city to change that barrier to something's a little bit more pleasing, but to really take advantage while it's being offered to us, and then doing some work on the back end to get it replaced by something that's more attractive. That's what I really want to advocate for, safety over aesthetics.
So do I hear that you would help lead that drive? If we-
Absolutely. You can
Okay.
count me in.
All right. Good to hear. Okay, at this point, I'd like for us to go ahead and have each of the members of the committee say their piece, what they think, and maybe offer up a motion for us to discuss. Kelly, we haven't heard from you.
So I think there's overwhelming support for the crosswalk at 62nd. So I think we should go ahead and support the crosswalk. As far as the bollards go, I kind of tend to agree that these bollards can be moved easily. And if PBOT thinks that the bollard placement that they're suggesting by their engineers will create a safe environment, then the neighborhood association and the neighbors probably need to look for replacing those bollards later, or moving them around, or doing something different. My take.
Hey, Terry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm supporting the crosswalk. I mean, that makes sense to me, but I can't support concrete bollards in the center of the street. I'll just put it that way. I mean, I think it's dangerous. And if somebody gets killed or injured because they crash into it, I can't go for that. Safety works both ways. Bicyclists have to obey the laws. They don't, in a lot of cases. So I just think that the putting those things in the street is, besides the aesthetics that are ugly, something concrete like that just doesn't make sense to me. So I cannot support the concrete barriers in the street, or whatever you want to call them, the pipes, the whatever.
Okay. Sharon.
In the spirit of compromise, I support an improved safety at 62nd and Sacramento with a painted sidewalk and some shrub trimming. I think it is overkill and unnecessary to put a bot there at 62nd and Sacramento. The area of greatest concern is 64th and Brazee. And I've asked repeatedly the Fix the Streets project and the Slow Streets project to coordinate their efforts and come up with a much better plan at 64th, Brazee, and Sacramento. So my view is, again, 62nd, spirit of cooperation, spirit of some enhanced safety there, crosswalk, and some shrub trimming.
Okay. Jenny's no longer with us, is she?
Jenny
Zachary.
sent me a message that said she was traveling. She was actually on her phone and her service went out, unfortunately. Okay. So she's down in California for some work related things.
Got it. How about you, Zach?
Well, I think I said my piece pretty right before you kind of wrapped it up. I wanted to add one last thing because I received a message from a neighbor that I just want to read because he asked me to. This was something he sent me yesterday and I just forgot while I was sitting here until now. He said, please share with the committee, let them know that my family and I, and he says kids age 8 and 6, want to see an emphasis on signage, barriers, and other speed deterrents on Sacramento. It's a neighborhood asset that routinely gets abused by car drivers. It's important to have repeated signage because of how much traffic joins up throughout the stretch between 60th and 72nd, as many cars zipping through the neighborhood to look for shortcuts miss the existing signs. His name's Brian Biggs. Kid's name Rowan and Dashel. He lives on 1863rd. You know, I think that we can come together and have the energy to replace a temporary bollard with something more attractive, and it may even give us the impetus and the energy to get everyone in the neighborhood to say, let's do this. And instead of missing the opportunity and then go and never getting it, we take it and then we use the energy to get something a little prettier in the future. I really can't strongly enough say that. And I keep hearing this from parents. All these people here were parents saying, please, please, please make it safer where our kids pass through to go to middle school or to and from the park. I think we got to honor those parents that live in our neighborhood.
Okay. So do I hear that as a motion?
Yeah, I would absolutely motion to ask PBOT to complete the crosswalk and the bollards at 62nd and Sacramento and 64th and Brazee.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Tamara, do you think we need to split that up so that we vote on the 62nd crosswalk and bollard, and then the 64th, I'm not sure is as finalized as we would like it to be?
Okay, I would be glad to break it up. But we do have a motion on the table, but I think it might die for a lack of a second. Why don't you try your hand at it, Kelly?
So I guess I move that we tell PBOT that the neighborhood supports the adding of a crosswalk at 62nd and the concrete bollards as a temporary solution to maybe be modified later.
At both intersections at 62nd?
No, just at 62nd.
Just 62nd. Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. So what we got is approval of the crosswalk as well as the bollards at 62nd. And the crosswalk would be accessing north and south to the across Sacramento to the Rose City Park Rose City Park. So we've got a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So we've got a 3. Okay. And so
Hey,
Those-
Tamara, I think you
those
had
opposed?
4. I thought I saw
You have
Kathy
4,
raise
yeah.
her hand.
yeah, but she's not a member of the committee.
Oh,
Right, yeah.
okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Either am I.
That's okay. And those opposed, same sign? Okay,
I support the crosswalk, but I can't support the bollard there.
and Sharon?
No.
Okay. So it does pass by 1 vote. Okay, Now
I
let's go-
suspect you'll have some angry neighbors if they put
Fucking
a
bullshit.
bollard in there. Because it's gonna remove a lot of parking.
we haven't really discussed that.
Yeah, but we discussed it at the last meeting. You put something in there and it's gonna take parking out in front of a lot of people's houses on Sacramento, particularly on the south side, and they don't have the option of parking around the corner.
Sharon? Okay. All right. Do you have another motion? Kelly?
You know, maybe I'm just out of the loop here, but I am still optimistic that there will be another solution proposed without the candlesticks that will coordinate between the Slow Streets project and what's her name from Peabody is doing. Am I mistaken?
Abra?
Abra.
Well, that will depend on whether or not we get a lead and we were hoping Ben Joy would lead that process up there to build a mural or something instead of it just being candlesticks. And so without a lead up there to take that on, to redesign that, I'm not sure what can be done. I know that they are willing to do whatever we ask them to do to a point, but I think we have to take the initiative, or the neighborhood up in that area needs to take the initiative of what do you want. I do think the 64th intersection at Sacramento needs to be honored as a vision corridor, view corridor. And so if there is a barricade put there, I would want it to be a garden or a vegetative barricade if possible, so it doesn't stand up like a robot.
I'm wondering if we, oh, sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
So shall we put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I thought Sharon said it pretty well when she was discussing it. If she can just put what she was talking about into a motion about combining the projects and.
Right. Well, we've asked them several times to do it. They seem to have a disconnect. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but have we officially put a motion forward to ask?
No, well, we've done it in the course of the meetings when they've been here. Please coordinate the effort to do that. I've done some informal talks to people around who live in that intersection. No one wants to take in a mural, especially to maintain the mural, fundraise every year and get paint and do it. They're not interested in that immediate area. Maybe others might be. We've talked about the low curb and removing the candlesticks and just having a low curb with the sidewalk there. And then the planter or some other form of barricade other than the bot. So I'm not sure what to say. What I was trying to indicate is 64th and Brazil in Sacramento was a much greater area of concern, at least to me, than 62nd Sacramento. That's unfortunate.
But I think that's what you're asking the city to do, is to combine the projects and come back with a better overall plan. And I think that in itself could be a motion.
All right, you say it.
Okay, a motion to ask the city to combine the two projects that's more aesthetically pleasing and supports the view corridor and come back to us. That's not the best wording, but that's the sense of it.
I second the motion.
Okay.
Can you clarify? I'm not exactly sure what the motion actually is. Can you clarify that, Terry?
Yeah, the motion is that we don't like the candlesticks, so we want to see a better overall plan for that intersection, the three street intersection. You want the city to come up with a better design and then come back to us and show us that design.
But that's not necessarily slow streets. We're talking
Well,
about
combine the two projects, the slow streets and the safe streets, I think is. Because we're talking two different projects here. We're talking slow streets, and we're talking what's the other one called, Sharon?
It was Fix the Streets
Fix
project.
the streets. Okay.
That's where the money came from.
So there's two different projects here, and if you combine those projects into one plan that is more aesthetically pleasing for the neighbors and supports the view corridor, then which would include removing the candlesticks. I mean, replacing it with something. I'm not trying to say this is exactly what it should be, but
and so you're actually opposing for there to be a barricade put there right now.
No, I'm not. I'm saying combine the two projects and come back to us with a plan that may or may not include a barricade.
And maybe a garden barricade.
That's true.
Which
I'm
would be
wondering-
great.
I'm wondering if, just kind of knowing how people operate, if instead of saying, please create a plan for us, if we actually sketched out a plan based on some of the conversations we've had and presented to them, we might get a little more traction. So an
I would
example
love
would be
to do
like,
that.
we would like you to take out the candlesticks and put up the reflective curbs. And instead of the 3 barricades with the poles on top, we'd like the one that is in the view corridor to just be a barricade with no poles but reflectors. And the 2 that are not in the blue view corridor slightly to the west, about 15 yards to the west, that are behind those trees on the ridge, that those could have the tall signs. So I'm just saying that's just totally off the top of the head. But if we presented, I think there's a more likelihood that it'll be accepted rather than us asking them to come up with the design and all the people they have to talk to. I don't know if that is true, but it just seems like it might be.
Can you just present it as an evolution though, a transition as you suggested, Zach? The city is going to do something right now and we need to have something done right now. I think it's great. I'm sure you would get neighborhood commitment and people volunteering, to help draft a more attractive alternative, even get long-term commitment to maintaining any gardens, et cetera. But that's something that we need to move towards while taking immediate action to address these serious issues with speeding, with traffic fatalities, with, all the stuff that these measures are supposed to address right now.
So could our motion say we would like them to move forward, and we are going to create a subcommittee of community members and committee members that are going to come up with an alternative retrofit?
So you're asking them to spend money and then turn around and spend more money because we're not going to like what they put in the first place. And that's what they've already done with the candlesticks.
They
I
agreed to
don't think that's financially or physically responsible.
We're not going to love it. We're going to like it. It's better.
And they agreed to do it. They agreed to do it. And Ben Joy would love to help you plot it all out and do a diagram. He's done a yeoman's job doing it already. He'd be willing to do it.
I'll work with Ben on that. That'd be great.
That'd be great.
So then, okay, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we ask on the 64th of Sacramento to be created as it is planned, and that Ben and we will invite Ben to join me to create an alternative garden-based design. I don't know if that was well worded enough for you, Kelly.
Okay.
And I would ask that the neighbors, the northeast corner of that intersection, the northwest corner of the intersection, and the house to the west of the house on the northwest corner of the intersection, Vicky, all 3 of them attended our meeting. If you could kind of include them in it, because they are the ones that are immediately impacted right there.
Cool.
Great.
Okay, so we've got a motion and an amendment to that motion, if you accept it, and then we need a second to that.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And 1, 2, got 1, 2, 3, 4, and
Where's your hand?
and my hand's up, but Terry's hand is not up. So all those in opposed, raise your hand.
I'm gonna say no, because I don't want to see that ugly bollard there.
Okay. All right. So in that last motion, I want to help emphasize that there is an adopted, city adopted view corridor across that intersection, and that this garden plan should honor that.
Yes.
Okay.
Terry, I just want to say that something is going in there. that is non-negotiable. That's
No,
my
there's
impression.
something there right now.
No, I know, but they're going to make it permanent and they're going to put something in there. They have made that very clear. It's going to happen. So either we jump in and say yes and help out and make it better
But
and
in the
honor the view
meantime, it's not
corridor.
better.
Pardon me?
In the meantime, it's not better. You're putting in an ugly thing that could last for 3 or 4 years.
Well, they're good. All right, but
Okay.
they're gonna put it or something else in. It's not negotiable.
Now, for the sake of time, I'd like to move on because it's already 8:30. And Raymond's been very generous with his time waiting to be heard with his topic about sidewalks. So if we're good with this subject, I'd like to just set it aside and then move on with the agenda. Is that okay for everyone? Okay. Raymond, why don't you come on in and give us your thoughts, and I will
Okay, I'm on.
your sketch. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I've been a resident in Rose City Park neighborhood for most of the last 30 years, and I keep waiting for all of these unfinished streets to be finally finished. And I guess I'm here tonight because I finally am out of patience. And I'm especially concerned with the streets that provide access to both Rose City Park and to Normandale, that Hancock and Tillamook leading to Rose City Park are not finished, do not have sidewalks, and yet they're the principal routes for children to access the park. The other problem with Tillamook not being fully complete is that it pushes much more car traffic onto Thompson. And Thompson at 57th is adjacent to the school. 59th is adjacent to the school. Those are dangerous intersections. So anything we can do to reduce traffic on Thompson by shifting a bit of it onto either Hancock or Tillamook would improve the safety of that neighborhood. The other park, Normandale Park, similarly, they have the streets on the west side of the park, Multnomah and Wasco. They look like third world streets. There are no sidewalks, potholes, nothing's completed. Again, I mean, these are the principal access routes for children and pedestrians to access the park, and there's no sidewalks. And then the west side of Normandale, 55th, is incomplete. The city has never provided sidewalks along 55th, along the park frontage. Neither is it on the southern border. Similarly, you know, the city has never provided sidewalks along Rose City Park, along 62nd, or along Tillamook. And I think they're both deficient and should be improved. So the real reason that I wanted, you know, I laid out my concerns and my arguments in the letter that I shared with Kelly, and Kelly has shared with all of you in the materials he sent out in advance of the meeting. And then as well, there's a map where I've indicated, you know, at least the streets that I found in the neighborhood that are incompletely improved. So that's a basis to begin. But I'm here wondering whether this committee shares my concerns and is willing to take action to force these improvements. You know, the city at this point simply requires new development to provide sidewalks. Well, if we wait for these lots to be redeveloped, it will be, you know, another 100 years. And I'm not willing to wait that long. But the city engineer under city code has the authority to force anyone on any property owner to fully improve their right-of-way, their adjoining right-of-way as needed. That's the word in the city code. You know, so it seems to me that if, with your help, with your endorsement, if we would approach the city engineer with concerns about the safety associated with the failure to fully improve these streets adjoining the park, then I think that we could make a strong argument to convince him to require the improvements in those streets. And I know that's a big chunk of change, but I think that it can be done in the same way that the city implements forced connections to the sewers, i.e. that they provide financing and then place a lien against the property until it's paid off. I mean, I would propose that it should be postponed until the property is transferred, you know, and at that time, you know, the city collects the money back, you know, for the improvements that they've installed. You know, so anyway, I just wanted to test this committee's interest in trying to do something like that and finally finishing some of these important thoroughfares that after 100 years still haven't been improved. So that's my question to you, Tamara, or to Kelly, or to anyone else.
Sharon.
Yes, my question was, what's the definition of as needed as pertains to these areas, as needed, or in general, what does that mean?
Excuse me? You're breaking up.
Oh, gosh. As needed, what's the definition of as needed?
Raymond, I think you're.
What's the definition?
Yeah.
I think that it's purely at the discretion of the city engineer.
Well, maybe that's the place to
You're reading
start.
from the City of Portland website. Says the city can require construction of new sidewalks if, quote, in the opinion of the city engineer, a sidewalk or curb or both are needed. That's Portland City Code Title 17.28.030. And then it goes on and says, traditionally, the city has not used this authority to require construction of sidewalks where they are missing in already developed areas. However, while not enforced, city code stipulates that sidewalk construction is legally the obligation of private property owners. So it's just puzzling to me, as I pointed out in the letter, the city is stringent about inspecting existing sidewalks to make sure that they're safe, and yet they, you know, they seem not to enforce the construction of sidewalks when they're lacking. You know, and under city code, the property owner would be responsible for any injury that results from either the poor maintenance of a sidewalk or the lack of a sidewalk. You know, so it's still the property owner's responsibility. He has legal liability.
Okay, Felix, you have your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 40 years ago, when I lived in Lentz, they came through and paved all the sidewalks. And we got to pay for it when we sold that house. Now that was motivated by the motivation behind that was the fact that they that area had very good drainage, so they could have all of Lentz drain into the natural soil, leaving space in Johnson Creek's capacity to drain Mount Scott. So there was a big motivator there to do that. But again, the city came in, paved all the streets, put in sidewalks and curbs, and we got the bill, and we could finance it for however long we wanted to, and then pay it when we sold the house. So I at least at that point, that program was in place.
Yeah, and to clarify, whenever you do put in sidewalks, it's not just the sidewalk, you put in storm drainage at the same time. And so it's not just putting in a sidewalk, you actually are building up a curb, then having the road graded a certain direction, and pipes laid for an outfall to go somewhere. So it is, I would say, a typical 50-foot frontage would cost at least $30,000. Terry.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was kind of heading. Your price was bigger than what I was thinking, but I was thinking in the tens of thousands of dollars. And I can't sit here and force that on any homeowner. I mean, the idea of putting the sidewalks in and improving the streets, I've lived in the neighborhood for over 60 years. I mean, I'm telling you my age to some degree now, but I used to walk to school on some of these streets. But what I'm thinking is that there's a lot of federal dollars out there right now. If we could somehow get some of these federal dollars to fix like Tillamook Street, there off the park, because that is a direct connection to the park. That's one of them that I used to walk to Rose City School on when I was going to Rose City Park School. I would do that, but I cannot see forcing a $30,000 bill, and I'll use your figure, onto a homeowner's. And a corner lot may even be more dollars. And it's going to require street improvements in addition to sidewalk improvements on Tillamook, on Hancock. Those are the ones I'm looking at. That's the map you have up. I know there's some over near Normandale too, but these are a little closer to home. So I just cannot, if we can get some federal dollars, a federal grant or something to do something, I'm all for it. But I don't want to force homeowners to, taxes are already way too high in the city of Portland. I mean, for me, my whole pension practically goes to the taxes on my house now.
Okay, Aaron, you're next. And then we have Nick Gross and
Yeah.
then back to Sharon, I guess.
So, I think you can make the argument with the city that public dollars need to take on a bigger portion of the cost of the sidewalk implementation. Because I think there's just a growing awareness, and you see this in city policy, in all these changing city policies, that pedestrian safety, pedestrian access that sidewalks provide, and slowing streets is a public health issue. So again, I recognize that it's a cost. I mean, maybe that's one way to approach the city is we're not saying that you need to do it completely from public dollars, but a bigger portion, because this is a public health issue.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I agree.
Nick?
Thanks. I wanted to expand on Terry's comment about procuring grant fund opportunities. So and this is mostly an announcement to the group and potentially a recommendation. The Oregon Department of Transportation has a program called Safe Routes to School. I think a lot of people are familiar with that. Within that program, there's a construction grant program, and that the new cycle is coming up with applications starting, I believe, in March of this year. The state is allocating $26 million to projects like what we're talking about, sidewalk infill or safer crossings. So the board could consider, and I'm not volunteering myself because I don't have the time, but someone could consider, Raymond maybe, sort of leading that effort. And what makes the grant very competitive is when the school, in this case, Rose City Park School, is a partner in the grant application. And I'm happy to provide more information about the grant process. I just don't have time to participate in writing the grant.
Thank you. Sharon, you have your hand up still?
Yes, I was thinking if those areas around the parks could be incorporated into the Safe Routes to School. I'm not quite sure where the school is in relationship to Normandale, but that's a great idea to do that, to slip it into another project and pool resources rather than dilute resources. I wanted to make a comment about inspecting sidewalks in general around the neighborhoods. Honestly, I don't think they do that. My mother in her mid-90s was walking along 60th and tripped on a raised sidewalk and fell face first and knocked out 3 of her teeth.
Wow.
In front of someone's house. It's 60th and Hancock. And a complaint was filed and the city notified them, and then they immediately fixed it. When a complaint is filed about an area, the city, of course, then comes and inspects that complaint area, and then they inspect adjacent property owners' areas. But as far as just going out and surveying all the sidewalks and going, oh, this, that, and the other, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that. I don't think they do that. It is complaint driven. So if you want to, you know, gather a group of people in areas that you're concerned about and see if there is a complaint to be filed, that might generate it. But, you know, the city's probably, as Terry expressed concern, not going to go and if there hasn't been a problem raised, you know, set that kind of bill on property owners until a complaint is generated. So that's my experience with my poor mother.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, it was horrible.
How horrible.
It was.
My Lord. Yeah, Terry.
Yeah, Sharon, I think you're absolutely correct. I don't know how far out they go, but it is complaint driven. And even sidewalks repairs can cost $15,000 or more. One of the other things I wanted to throw out that, and I'm looking at Tillamook and Hancock Street there off of 62nd. You put sidewalks on those streets and you put parked cars on both sides of those streets, and you have a very much of a safety problem for a narrow street that does have traffic coming down Tillamook from 82nd and has to go someplace. It may drive more traffic over to Thompson. I actually think the removal of the stop signs on 62nd and Tillamook drove more people over to Thompson, but I can't say that for sure.
Okay. I do know that when I researched the construction of sidewalks in the city of Portland, they have a program right now down in Lentz and also one in Cully where they are installing sidewalks. And I think, again, it's probably a local improvement district. Like was spoken about previously, it would be a lien against property owners over a period of time. I don't know how that was initiated or how they're selected. If there is the will of the committee, I could have someone come and speak to our group regarding that process, or Saul can take up the lead and try to get the neighbors to move ahead with this, or we could, you know, identify it as a health issue and see if we can do a grant through Safe Routes to Schools. The hard part here is there's no school next to Normandale Park. There is a school located just north of Thompson Street, which would be to the left in this map. And so the quickest route from the school to that park would actually be on the already paved and sidewalk street of Thompson. So I'm not seeing any real win as far as a way to get this done. I know that we have been after PBOT for a very long time, ever since I started on this committee. My gosh, how long has it been? Since 2008, regarding getting sidewalks between 60th and Normandale Park, because many folks that use the Normandale Park that come across the bridge from North Gleason neighborhood go in that direction, for lack of a better route. And there aren't any sidewalks. And that is the same street that is a bikeway and the same street that the industrial traffic runs on. So there's a lot of conflict going on along that route.
And a serious injury recently.
Really?
Yeah.
That's Hasselo Street, yeah.
Hasselo, yes. A very serious injury occurred. You'd have to ask Bob about that.
So if we took on any of these, I would champion Hasselo Street as a health safety issue, and maybe we could take things one at a time. But that is definitely a problem site.
And trucks go there.
And trucks are there.
One of the things with Tillamook in particular, the pavement on the street itself is in just horrible condition. I can't remember the lady's name that lives on 61st and Tillamook, lives on the corner that, did the painting in the intersection there. Can't remember her name, but I mean, the city comes out and fills a pothole, and a month later, there's another pothole, or that pothole's caved out again. And it's just a constant repair bill. I mean, even if they came along and paved the street and paved it wider. And the other thing I'm thinking too, has anybody driven down, I think it's 60th Avenue from Cully over to Columbia? They've actually put in an asphalt sidewalk there, bikeway, that, it's a safety thing, but it's not the expense of putting in a concrete sidewalk and curbs and whatnot. It's kind of a halfway measure that works very well, at least in my opinion. I mean, I don't like the candlesticks that they have on the ends of the little curbs there, but other than that, as far as for a pedestrian safety, they're not walking in the street or walking on dirt or anything like that anymore.
Okay, we're running low on time. We're down to 8:50, and we still have a number of things we're not getting to
So
tonight.
Tamara, what do you think about somebody trying to set up a meeting with the city engineer to discuss this further and try to figure out how they address needs for sidewalks?
If I might interrupt, I do think that contacting the city engineer's office is a logical next step. But if we would proceed to express these concerns, we have to identify the streets that are of most concern for us. We've got to make sure that we don't ask for too much.
I'm just thinking that some more research would be good. If Ray would be willing to do some more research on this and come back to.
Such as contacting the city engineer's office, is that what?
Correct. And then maybe
you'd like me to do?
About the safe routes to school, if the grant process, if that's a process that we could use, and then come back to us, and then we could decide what kind of support we need to provide you.
I'd be in favor with what Tamara
Well,
identified.
I think we have to figure out which streets we want to improve, and then we can figure out how to pay for them.
That's what I meant, that Tamara's identified an area, and that has been an area of concern. And I would put you to, what's his name? Bob Richardson?
Yeah.
There on the corner, who's been videotaping for years and then crashes. Yeah, and put you in touch with, because he'd be right there with you.
What about all of the money that the ODOT has received or the state has received from the COVID relief funds. I just wonder if there isn't some money there that could be made available as well.
Most of that is earmarked for health-related issues, but
There's transportation dollars in there. There's transportation dollars. TriMet's
Engineer's
getting
office
some. ODOT got some of it's going to be going.
could
to
help
the
us
city.
identify funding sources, but go ahead.
I just think that there may be some money there. It may be a wild goose chase. I don't know.
Can I share a couple things? One was, I was under the impression Haslo was going to have some construction done, and I'm interested in hearing if they are improving the sidewalks when they do that. That was one thought. The second one was, if we want to improve our neighborhood, then we approach it that way. If we want this to be systemic across Portland to help not just our neighborhood, but all our neighbors and all neighborhood associations, then I'd suggest we go the route of finding out what other, what is happening, do the research, invite the engineer to come talk to us and tell us what's happening. And I'm in favor of that final one, because as much as it's nice to improve our neighborhood, it'd be nice to find out where we are as a city and if we can do something systemically.
Well, I think that we might be able to create a model for other communities, but this is a thorny issue throughout the city. So what I'm trying to do is just focus on our neighborhood. And if it works here, perhaps it can be used elsewhere. But to talk about sidewalks for the whole city is a can of worms, especially for those areas of the city that were originally developed when they were, unincorporated in Multnomah County. I have no idea how to cope with that. Focused
No,
as
that's a good point, Ray. Totally.
I just don't want to impact homeowners, the people that own the homes, and say, hey, we're going to do this and now you're going to have to pay for it. There's too much of that going on.
Kelly, where should we go from here?
Well, I was suggesting that we try to keep Ray interested in finding out more for us and reporting back.
I think that's a great idea.
Well, you say finding out more about funding sources?
About how you go about.
That's what you said earlier. And my response to that was, until we find out which streets we want to improve, we don't know what funding would be applicable.
We might show the city engineer your map and talk about all the streets that we've identified. And then we could talk about maybe the highest priority street for us was Hassalo, which could be added on to the Halsey project if the city so desired.
And I would support that motion, because I really think this committee would identify, or should identify, Hassalo as the top priority for getting sidewalks in, and seeing if we can find some additional funding for that access point between 60th and Normandale Park. Now, is there support, general support between all of us here for that as a priority? Hands? Is that a yes?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine with me. I'd like to see a second priority being Tillamook because of the condition of the street, but
Well, I think Tillamook might be part of the the area that is around the park may be part of the pedestrian trail around the golf course.
That's a thought too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to, as stated by Kelly, could we say so moved, with the focus, primary focus to begin with would be on Hassalo Street as identified by this map, and to see if we can get the some more information on how whether, what direction should we go in order to get those improvements made? And if there's funds available.
Can you say specifically what you mean by how we go about getting that? Who's the point person on getting that information?
Well, Raymond was going to be the point person to go and check with the engineer,
Okay.
I thought. And
Ray, you down with that?
Tamara, can we
Sure,
add?
I'm willing to contact the city engineer's office, but again, I'd like some direction
Invite him to
as
come.
to which streets this committee is most concerned about improving.
Oh, we just said that, Hasselo.
And the map that I provided to you it may not be complete. I mean,
yeah, we just said Haslow.
I did the best I could, you know,
Yeah, you did
in our
great.
neighborhood. Excuse me? Are you just talking about Northeast Haslam?
Yes,
Yes.
as our
West
first
of
priority.
60th, west of 60th.
Right,
Between
Northeast
60th
Haslam
and
from 50,
Normandale.
from 57th to 60th is paved and curved, but it doesn't have sidewalks.
Well, I would be glad to work with you and getting the engineer to come to our next meeting and give us some ideas of what we can do.
Tamara,
Yes,
with the motion, I would like to add the words that doesn't financially impact homeowners or property owners. I just don't think that's fair that this committee should be telling property owners that they have to pay for something.
we're not telling anybody anything. We're just investigating.
No, but we were looking at financing options, and I'm looking at something that financing options that don't impact property owners.
Well,
I guess
Terry,
I'm-
you know, all of the other property owners have borne this expense. Why should we make an exception for these folks that have not yet done so?
They didn't make that decision. They probably bought the house after it was that way.
And the cost of the house was less because it didn't have those.
Right,
improvements.
and all of the other property owners in our neighborhood have paid for the full improvement of their rights of way.
When the house was built.
And if you put a lien against the property, it
Now,
comes
I
out of
can't
these,
go for that. I can't go for a lien. against
Okay,
the
well,
property.
then you can say
it
no.
comes out of these inflated values of the property.
Okay, stop.
Let's do the
Stop.
rest.
Time
And
out.
HB
Time out. No arguments. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to go ahead and get the engineer here. And if you don't want to say you're in favor, then don't. I'm going to ask for, do I have a second for that motion?
That's just to get the engineer to come
Right.
to our meeting.
Right.
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
uh,
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, there you go. Got it.
Okay, and is Ray gonna do that or are you doing that, Tamara?
I will work with Ray on that.
Okay,
I'm willing to do it. I'll contact his office and invite a representative of his office to come to your next meeting, the land
That would be
use
great.
meeting. Is that
Yep,
what you'd
it would
like?
be the
And
17th
then
of February.
have him prepared, and I'll ask him to be prepared to
fine.
discuss, to accomplish this. Is that what you'd like me to ask?
Yes, that would be great.
And would someone reach
Okay.
out to Bob Richardson? This has been his baby for years.
It has been. You're right. Okay, it is 9:01. And what I would like to do is I would like to entertain possibly grabbing Sharon as part of my policy committee to come up with some language as far as identifying how we select members for this committee, how we retain them, and what's the protocol for appointment
Can you
as
unshare your
identified
screen?
in the charter.
So
Can
it
you
would be,
unshare the screen?
I can unshare the screen, yes.
Thank you.
so what you want to do is review and potentially add wording regarding those subjects to the Land Use and Transportation Committee charter.
No, what I'm wanting to do is create procedures and policies that we would have carried with us as a separate text as far as the interpretation and implementation. Not necessarily changing a charter, but I've been wanting to create a book of policies. And those policies would say, okay, this is the protocol for communications. This is protocol for land use, you know, that type of stuff, like we've done with notification for land use. And that way that can be kept with the charter and then referred to by folks as we go forward.
So it's a how-to manual for the charter.
Yes, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I'll look at it and see if I can think that through.
yeah,
Sure.
it's the idea, and we had talked about this also when we were doing the bylaws, you know, how
Yeah.
can we keep the bylaws or the charter separate and a discrete product, but then also having procedures set up to help facilitate the implementation of the groups.
Okay.
If that's okay for everyone, she and I will come back with some wording at the next meeting. Sound good? All right.
Sounds good. Was there anything really urgent in the agenda? I'm feeling that there was something that we needed to talk about that we didn't quite get to. Maybe we could take a minute and there was something.
While you're looking, I just wanted to make, while you're looking, Sharon, I just wanted to make one comment about the safe or the slow streets. I happen to notice on Gleason Street, I think it's 87th or 86th where it comes in, and they have the bollards like they want to put at the Daily Cafe there. But those headed off the street, it was a right turn only. And I don't think we were ever told that at 52nd and Halsey, northbound traffic may only be able to make a right-hand turn. So I think it's something we need to look into.
That's important. It is. Okay. The only other thing I can think of is I know that the Rose City Park golf course is having a community day for that they're planning, and they want to have two representatives from our Rose City Park, and Terry's going to be one of them, and wanted to see who else wanted to serve.
The other one was named.
Nate?
No, it was named. Because I got an email and both wrote, I was the second one to be
Joe,
asked to be on the
Joe
committee.
is named, but he's not really a member.
I think it was a lady, but I don't remember who. I got an email.
Well, you got an email from Mary Dorman.
No, I got an email from Vincent.
Okay.
Well,
you may want to forward that to me because am
I able to, oh, I better not. I just, I try to look at it, but I might lose you trying to do that.
Okay. Anyway.
I can forward it to you.
Just to let you know that that is out there. If there's anyone from the committee that wants to represent Rose City Park, I'm all for it.
When is it? When is their
They're
thing?
going to meet like 2 or 3 more times, and they're thinking about sometime in June or July for the community day. All right, Nick. Okay. All right.
Was there any member issues of concern?
That's what we're going to talk about with the policy.
Okay.
I wonder if I could see if people want to tour the Umpqua Bank apartment tower and could pick a day next week to do that.
I could do that.
So they said Tuesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I'm thinking 5 o'clock.
Sounds good to me. That time works for me.
and pick a day or two next week that people are available.
Kelly, can you remind the goal of the tour?
The goal of the tour is just to kind of liaison with this group. So we are having parking issues with them.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to create a relationship with the resident manager. And so I asked for a tour, and then we're having these side discussions about parking.
Is this Cause or Sandy 51?
Oz,
This is cause.
Cause, okay.
did you know that the bank's not going to move in there?
Yeah, they have signed a lease with Rivermark Credit Union. So the bank decided to stay in their temporary location, and they are 30 days away supposedly from opening this Rivermark Credit Union in February or March.
Okay, Thursday looks good to me.
Okay.
But,
Thursday, the 27th.
yep,
I think, isn't the 20, for me, the 27th, I believe, is the LUTOP meeting for CNN. I mean, it's not until 7 o'clock, but it's gonna kind of be tight.
okay.
Is this an outdoor tour around the neighborhood? Is that the idea, Kelly?
Nope. Tour of the facility.
Oh, going inside. Okay, gotcha.
And then we're going to walk around maybe the neighborhood and look at the parking challenges.
Okay. I will try. Thursday is the crazy teaching day for my wife. She teaches all day. So if I can come, I will. Will you just share the date and time we finalize on here? And I'll come if I can. I'd love to see that.
I can also make Wednesday, but I have to probably leave after an hour.
Yeah, we're not going to do it more than an hour.
Okay, so Wednesday, the 26th will work.
Okay, I'm going to give them two dates, the 26th and the 27th, have them pick a day, and then I'm going to send it out to all the board members, because some board members have indicated an interest in touring.
Okay, sounds great.
Just as an FYI, I found a bunch of meeting notes that I regurgitated to Cause Development of all the things they promised they would do with parking, and they haven't done any of them. So it was really kind of fun to attach the meeting notes and say, you know, you told us during development you were going to do this, this, and this. So they're getting back to me on those things.
Sounds good.
Ye
All right.
old lesson.
Yeah,
That's a lesson.
very
They
good.
say they're
Thank
gonna
you for
do
doing
it,
that.
grease you, butter you all up, and then do whatever the heck they want and change their minds.
And
Forget.
Cameron's invited somebody to talk about the Cully TIF at our next meeting. We haven't heard back yet.
Okay,
About what?
the Cully TIF.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so at this point, it's 10 after 9. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I second that. All those in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye, aye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
all
Talk
right,
to you later,
bye-bye.
Tamara. Okay,
All
bye.
right, bye-bye. Take care.